5 weeks, voters will decide who the next president of the United States will be. There is a lot at stake in this election for both Democrats and Republicans, and also for everyday Americans dealing with coronavirus and economic hardship. Systemic racism, also a very hot button issue, with critics calling on the president to reinstate racial sensitivity training.
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place in our military, in our schools, all over the place.
This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division.
We're a country at a crossroads right now, and no one knows that better than our next guest, civil rights leader Reverend Al Sharpton, whose new book, Rise Up, was just released yesterday. And what a morning to have Reverend Al here. Thank you for waking up with us and being here this morning, Rev.
Thank you for having me.
So first, let me get your take on last night's debate. It was quite the show. President Trump's refusal to denounce white supremacy, calling on the alt-right group Proud Boys to stand back and stand by. Your reaction to that?
Well, I think that the two things that were alarming to me was his refusal to denounce white supremacy and telling the Proud Boys what he did, which you properly quoted him, and the fact that he would not say that he would accept the outcome of the election in a peaceful, transitional way. He really is the first president of the United States history to really question the elections and the integrity of a vote count before an election, and saying that when he was given the opportunity by Chris Wallace of Fox News, no less, to say that I'm calling my followers to not do anything violent, not to go to the streets, would you do that? His answer was, I'm calling on my followers to be poll watchers, and we're not going to tolerate anything that looks wrong. To undermine the democratic process is one of the reasons I came out with this book. It was unbelievable. It reminded me of when I was going to Tilton High School in Brooklyn, of a guy that was in the class that couldn't pass a test. So he always tried to disrupt the class, saying someone was cheating on him. His real purpose was that he was avoiding the fact that he couldn't pass the test. Trump can't pass the presidential test.
I want to get into that book in just a moment, but when you look at the debate, did either of the candidates do anything to sway their voters? And in your thoughtful opinion this morning, how crucial will the Black and Latino vote be in deciding this race?
I think that Donald Trump hurt himself with suburban independent voters, particularly women. I think that Biden probably held his base because he didn't lose his cool. I think Black and Latino voters will be crucial. When you look at the Electoral College map, which is the only way Donald Trump won, in Wisconsin, where Hillary Clinton lost by 23,000 votes, in Michigan, where she lost by only 12,000, the Black and Latino vote being energized now with a candidate who is an incumbent, who's not done anything for them, and who has openly embraced segments of white supremacist groups. I think they can make the difference in those close states that were lost on last time. I think that will be decisive.
And that seems to be the analysis this morning by so many folks, is that Vice President Joe Biden kept his cool, whereas President Trump seemed to bulldoze his way through. Young voters also playing a very pivotal role in this election, and you address this in your new book, right, on many issues that are important to them. So did you purposely release the timing of this book to kind of coincide with the election?
Not at all. I wanted it out before the election, and frankly, I had started writing and had intended to have it come out in early summer. And then the events that kept happening that I was thrust in the middle of, George Floyd's killing, and the reaction and the marches and the rallying and my doing the eulogy happened, and then others happened. And I just kept going back to the publisher saying, I have to add this, I have to add that, all the way up to our big march on Washington just 4 weeks ago. So I wanted it out before the election, but it kept being delayed because of events that I was thrust in the middle of. And I talk about all of it, along with the overall theme that the country's at the crossroads. Have we lost the moral center? Are we a country that is going to continue fighting for what is right in terms of race, in terms of climate change, in terms of LGBTQ rights and gender equality? Or are we going the route that Trump has began to bring us in the last 3.5 years of going back to pre-1950 America? I've made my whole life dedicated to the road for fighting for what is right in the areas I
Right.
outlined. Certainly, I think it is time for us. He says to white supremacists to stand by. I say rise up and fight all of that.
Yeah, would not and refused to denounce white supremacy last night. That was a big topic of the debate. And also George Floyd. You know, you're mentioning George Floyd, who died when his knee was on his neck. And we look at the situations that unfolded, right, with black men dying at the hands of police. When you look at the COVID crisis that has unearthed a lot of racial disparities, what is your message right now, besides the protests and marches, that communities can do to rise up, like you say, and bring about change?
Last chapter of the book I do, How Do You Become an Activist? Everybody needs to use their little group, whether it's their family and all, to really start going to the meetings, start writing your legislators, and we need to go and get laws passed long after the season of protest is over. What will have changed in terms of the laws? One of the big things that we raised during the big march on Washington 4 weeks ago was the George Floyd Policing and Justice Act, federal law, and the John Lewis Voter Act, federal law, both of which have already passed the House of Representatives. We need to make the Senate vote on it and make it law. What made the civil rights movement of the 60s work is that they were able, after a year of 63 of demonstrations and movements, get the 64 Civil Rights Act, the 65 Voting Rights Act.
Yeah.
We cannot end this season of demonstration without new legislation so that our children's children will enjoy laws from our protesting the inequities that we face.
Reverend Al, congratulations on the new book, and thank you for making the time this morning on such an important morning to talk to you and hear your voice.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and you can grab a copy of Reverend Al's Rise Up, Confronting a Country at the Crossroads, wherever books are sold.